introducing me. I started Promethean Biofuels in late 2007 after a tragic event at a company before that was a specialist in e-waste recycling, had 80 employees, and we had some issues financially, and we had to shutter that. It's difficult when you have to lay off 80 folks, when you lose your house and do all sorts of stuff. And so I decided that I'd start this thing. I didn't know where I'd get any money for it, but I did it to keep from being depressed. And so for about a year, we sat there, we were sort of planning out what we're going to do, and then things just sort of came together. I can go to the next slide.
Hey, Todd, that remote does work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I used it for my presentation. Okay. You use the down there, like the channel down or whatever.
I'm going to do a test.
Not that one. Over to the right, lower. No, the right. The right. There you go.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So, about Promethean, we have 150 individual members. As a cooperative, we are a hybridized cooperative. Cooperative law in the state of California is about 50 years behind cooperative law in states like Kansas, Iowa, and things like that. And so even getting the vehicle incorporated was a real sort of dramatic event. It took 3 weeks negotiating with the state of California, things like what does a shareholder mean? Because these things are really very specific in the terms of a corporate sort of commercial environment. But when you're dealing with co-op, obviously you have unequal contribution but equal interest. And in dealing with those sorts of situations, I want to be able to build what was basically an equity-ready or investment-ready cooperative, meaning that the people who were putting money in did have certain protections. The balance there is that you can't break the philosophy. And so we've had some issues really developing the right kind of cultural tone internally, and it's something we always struggle with. We have 150 individual members at this time. We're servicing approximately 300 local establishments. Now, some of that's for a different thing called grease trap. I'll talk about that a little later. 2% are active as workers right now. So we've got anywhere between 4 and 6 employees at any given time. And sometimes we get interns, and they count too. Still no distributions made from the co-op yet. Okay, so we're not profitable. We're not doing that sort of thing. We aren't taking over. And we have extreme capital constraints, as everyone does. And the constraints have been exacerbated by a recent acquisition of that second business talking about, the grease trap pumping. We'll go into that later on. We occupy the southern portion of a building in Temecula, California. We have this southern 17,000 square feet facility.
What's the zoning?
The zoning is fully industrial, meaning that it is, we are, okay. It took 22 months for construction and permitting. Behind us actually is a hub for wastewater treatment processing. But we are co-located next to a material recycling facility. Okay. And they do things like bottles, cans, plastic, cardboard, steel, and other kinds of metals and copper as well. When we started, quite frankly, I'd written letters to a bunch of different cities saying, hey, would it be okay if we applied for a plant here? And how long would it take for permitting, and how much do you think it would cost, roughly? Now, when you ask people in advance how much you think permitting is going to cost, they're probably going to lie to you. They definitely lied to me about the time. They told me 3 months, okay? It was the lowest bidder, so you get what you pay for. And so 22 months later, we finally had our operating permits.
How long have you been in business?
We've been in business, we took 2 years for construction, okay? And so we've really been producing about 2.5 years.
Okay.
In whatever format that production is, because we have really tight feedstock constraints. Because it took so much extra time to do the permitting, and because I started not focused on feedstock. Okay. In fact, I have to be quite frank with you, when I first did the design for the plant, it was designed as a glycerin processing plant. Because in 2007, you all might remember, diesel was $4.50 or $5 a gallon in certain regions. And I did not think I would ever be able to find a place in the ecosystem for making biodiesel, but I thought there'd be a ton of glycerin. And so what I was really looking at doing was creating a plant that could do complex glycerolysis, acrylic acid production, and even some of the transient chemicals like acrylic and things like that, which you can use in plastics. And so you'll see some things where I didn't do the standard. We didn't start with a lot of combiotic tanks. Okay? We didn't start with certain things that you look at in a traditional, conventional, pure play biodiesel plant. I didn't want to be able to take fuel and get it to spec, because I thought there would be a lot of places that really could not produce spec fuel. I thought there might be a lot of opportunities to buy off-spec or rework product. And so I did have that, but I didn't have an easy path to it. I just had a path where I knew we could do something with that product. We built a plant out of 90% recycled materials. Now we had an agreement with the fire department, and so we had to build the plant, especially the core process areas, to the petroleum standard, which meant that we had to use 3,000-pound fittings, things that are completely, quite frankly, unrealistic for the kinds of processes that we're dealing with the exception of there are some benefits in doing that, because if you've got acids or corrosion happening, you have a longer cycle before you have to do maintenance. This is how we got started, basically. I just want to show a sample of pumps. Most of the tankage is recycled. We did have some pressure vessels that we had to get retested. Some propane tanks, some filters. This is way back when. And you'll see that we had 2 tanks here, and these were supposed to be for incoming and final product. Now we're a co-op, and we didn't have a lot of oil. And so what really happened to us going forward is we realized that this was a very inefficient approach for us, because we were getting oil that didn't belong to us. And we couldn't mix that oil because it was coming in all different kinds of grades. And so we had to find some solutions after that as well. And then just some pictures about the spacing and how we've got some of the feedstock arranged. We have survived primarily by doing a lot of design, build, and research projects for other companies. So that has really been a major source of our revenue up until third quarter of 2010. Then we really started getting sort of more production-ready stuff happening. We've got some tolling agreements going on, and we were able to sort of perfect our process. We have a bunch of different ways of doing stuff. We tend to like to make recycled stuff, and we also like to look at different kinds of things, like how different resins perform at temperature and areas where there's not a lot of work that's been done. And so one of the things that we built here was a small column. Now you see we have 2 small columns that we home built inside, and they were working really well. But the issue was we did not have a temperature point. We have 4 zones where we really deliver temperature inside the plant. And so what I wanted to do was be able to take small amounts and see if there was a differential in temperature at the temperature I sent the biodiesel through for the plant. So we designed an internal coil. This is basically an old school wastewater treatment filter, and we simply modified it to allow us to see inside, control pressure, and clean it out more easily. Okay. This is a methanol recovery skid that we delivered to a commercial plant, designed really to do their intermediary phase fraction for methanol recovery. And it works in a very, very simple fashion. It's a series of gear pumps to vacuum conversions, and it gets good results if it meets the spec criteria. This is our methanol recovery tower. We still are finishing out trying to get it to work. There's a series of plates that we've used to actually increase the theoretical column height here, but we built this internally. And then you'll see here, this is our oil intake area. This is for larger truck stuff, and we just basically took 2 irrigation filters, emptied them out of the sand, changed the screening approach inside internally. We opened it up. You'll see we've got the bane of our existence, a centrifugal pump that pumps here. It gets airlocks all the time. We just bought 2 sewer chopper pumps, and I think that's going to improve the situation. When it pumps really well. It was designed for 800 gallons a minute. We've gotten up to about 250 gallons a minute, which is a fine rate for us. But when it locks, it's just one of those nightmares. This is the result of listening to Jason Burrows. No, it was great. When I first started, he said that if he had it all to do over again, he would have started simply moving stuff around in trailers. Okay? And I thought that that was a great idea. And I went through the state of California for about 3 weeks, getting them to approve the use of water trailers on the road for this thing. So we've got our 3 water trailers that we have out there. They're 500 gallons apiece. We basically just replumbed them. You'll see that we put the pump on. We don't want them distributing water, of course, out the side accidentally and things like that. But it's been a very good mechanism for us as we got started, and we didn't have a lot of oil to pump.
What kind of pump do you have on there?
It varies. We've had everything, because the pumps go out. I mean, the pumps go out quite frequently. So I can't tell you what brand it is today. We've had everything.
It's like a trash pump or
yeah, it's a trash pump. Yeah. We do have 1 gear pump that we tried, but the diesel motor that we're using on it, because we only had 1 diesel motor, went out on it. We haven't replaced it yet.
Are you talking about pumping oil?
Yes.
We've had a lot of success with Moino pumps.
Yeah, absolutely. Moino stator pumps?
Moino?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have 2 of those, not actually for, these are longer stator pumps. We're using them for mixing some testing that we've been doing with capitation reactors.
What brand is that?
Moina. It's actually a type of pump.
Yeah,
And-
it's designed to break, if it gets to a point, like it's designed to pump thick stuff, we pump our front end oil with it. And if it gets stressed out, it'll break a little tiny pin that's really cheap and easy to replace.
But the issue with it is it's really designed to make sure that you're delivering a consistent flow and this consistent quantity. So with every rotation, it's like a screw pump basically.
Yeah.
With every rotation, what's happening is it's delivering a consistent pressure and a consistent quantity. And they tend to be a little bit on the expensive side.
Yeah, and they're variable speed.
Yeah.
They're just real, they've lasted.
About our environment, we operate a sister company for grease trap servicing. We acquired it in August of last year, a 26-year-old family business. It was really, he was focused on grease trap servicing and septic. He didn't do any oil collection. And he had about 150 customers or sites. And we thought, well, this is great because he hasn't been doing any oil collection. And if I was going to spend money, I'd either have to do that on advertising materials and getting the word out. And it's very relationship based. I think everybody here realizes it's very relationship based to get away. So I thought, oh, ding, 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 this is a winner, right? Unfortunately, it's really difficult to convert customers that have been doing the same thing for 15 years. And a lot of them, the restaurants are really suffering currently in the state of California. And so even big chains like Sizzlers, for us, big chains, Marie Calendar, they filed bankruptcy this year. They bounced checks to us for services. So it's an amazing thing how we've done this acquisition and we were really cash positive. I made the call to do the acquisition. We even had due diligence. And then right after that happened, these things went boom. Okay. So be careful, because you can go from a good position to a bad one very, very quickly in this business. We also have noticed there's a change in the market for those of you who are doing active recruitment for new sites. That it seems as if the newer franchises seem to have other operating agreements that are in place. Okay? It used to be corporate stores where the heart stores get into, but the franchise owner was really the sweet spot. Any guy who had 3 to 10 stores was a nice place to go. But with the newer stores, the franchisees or franchisors have gotten more sophisticated and packed more stuff. And now you also have food suppliers like Cisco picking regional folks as well to compete with. But that also presents you an opportunity if you can find a way to, over the long term, this is not a short term thing that we're doing. If you can get in with those folks, maybe you will be the recommended vendor and you'll have their salespeople basically helping.
And Cisco has a program called iCare, and you can pay them to be their listed provider. We were part of that for a long time. They give you your own website. You're listed. And I asked them repeatedly, what are you actually doing for us? You know, will you put our name out there? And they couldn't ever give me anything tangible other than your name's listed. And we stopped being a member because they could never tell us what they were really doing for us.
So my approach is a little bit more guerrilla. I asked the restaurant who their Cisco rep is. And then we try to establish a relationship with Cisco.
We had a relationship with our Cisco rep when they left Cisco.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're right,
Yeah.
that's the way to do it,
Yeah.
is to be friends with the Cisco rep.
You could even get them to come down to the plant and see what you do with the oil, and then they can certainly put in a good word for you. Because we have a restaurant, so we have good relationships with all the
It was our
reps.
Cisco rep
Yeah.
that came to us and she said, I would like to leave Cisco and come work for you.
Oh, cool.
And unfortunately, it was not.
Bad timing, yeah, I know.
Economically, it didn't work for us.
But there's a Ventura Foods that does an oil exchange program.
I don't know if it's local or national, I don't know.
I think it's a national.
It's a national program and they're contracted with Cisco.
Oh, is that what's going on?
Actually, no, they do well. They're contracted with
Standard Biodiesel.
who purchase them.
Yeah, but Standard's still operating inside.
I'll let you
California.
continue.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, no worries at all. So we've also been encountering a little bit more resistance from our larger competitors of late. One of the things that's happening, obviously, is that there's a lot of grease theft in the state of California. It's an amazing thing. But also, we're growing, and we're more out there. I think they're just becoming aware, and you sort of get that foci happening. Community scale has really been what's kept us alive. And we'll talk a little bit later about what I think community scale really is. But it's been really a silver lining to us. If we were any bigger, I would be talking to you about how I close the plant today. About Grease Masters, it specializes in traps under 5,000 gallons. So there's a gap there. We've been looking at getting a bigger truck for that area. We have two vacuum tank trucks. They're 2,500 and 3,500 gallons in size. It also does our larger oil collection runs. So that was the great thing that we did get out of the business, capability to sort of multitask with those trucks. We're busy rebranding the company. So it was inland pumping. And so we've basically gone about rebranding it to Grease Masters.
Are you rebranding both as the same one?
No. Promethean stays Promethean for a couple of reasons.
Do you just do exterior traps?
No, we do exterior and interior traps.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
on Grease Masters, are you now funneling all of your oil collection through that rebranded?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Because there's a more complex partnership structure on the Grease Master side, because it is a company.
Yeah.
Okay. But there are also certain liability issues, and there's certain legal issues that, for example, in a cooperative in California, we have this thing called workman's compensation, where basically about 20% of every dollar on top of your payroll goes to basically workman's compensation. Okay? If I was managing director of an LLC or another kind of company, I would be exempt. But because I'm managing principal of a co-op, I am not exempt, for example. So we have to pay that stuff, even though I'm really just doing distribution sometimes. We have to pay for that. On the other side, for Grease Masters, I'm running Grease Masters. It's we want to separate the liability of having the trucks that are going, they're larger trucks. People are probably not likely to intentionally back into our trailer, but we have definitely had, I've had in prior experiences, businesses where people will run into your truck on purpose to get insurance money. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. And so I had a case when I was with True Cycle where there was a lady, she was pregnant, and the truck was stopped. And she ran into the truck, and then we started getting this notice from the lawyer that we were going to get sued if we didn't settle, Okay, so we get that kind of stuff, and I know that that exists, and so I don't want to have to deal with that. There's also some great things about separating the insurance. We have great rates for Promethean right now. We've been operating for 3 years without any injuries. So I don't want to do that with a new acquisition, take on some additional burdens there too. But it does mean that we double pay for a lot of stuff. Okay. We do a lot of things as a cooperative. One of the things we do is we act as a collection center and office load site for transporters and peddlers. So we can't get all of our own oil, okay? But we can clean up oil for folks who don't have collection facilities, or logistically, geographically, it makes better sense for them to not transport any additional water. They stop off, we process their stuff, we send it off to where the next place is.
So you clean it, you filter it, you heat it, get rid of water?
Absolutely. We drop it down to whatever spec the customer requests. So if they're giving us 15 FFA oil and they want to see it at 2, we'll charge them for that. won't get into.
Do you, are you subject to the same rendering rules as in Texas?
Our rendering rules are actually more stringent, but more stringent than in Texas.
Okay.
And so the regulatory climate for us, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but we were probably the most heavily regulated state as it pertains to biodiesel production in the nation at this stage.
That's why when Lyle complains about what they're dealing with in North Carolina, we're like, whatever.
Yeah. and I'll have some other thoughts to share about that in BQ 9000 too. We make biodiesel, and we also offer that as an outside service.
How much do you charge for that?
It depends, because it's very complex now. It wasn't so complex for me last year because I didn't have RINs, and I have a whole story about that, so I'm going to go into that a little later. But it depends because there's so many different factors. Who's keeping RINs? Who's doing the blending? Are we doing the blending? But it ranges $1.50 to $2. If I'm not doing anything afterwards, everything's passed through. And it also depends on the quality of oil, really, because your chemical cost changes as well. We make vessel esters, right? That's different than making fuel grade. Sometimes the esters that we make do exceed fuel rate, but in reality, there's a distinction there. There's a market for just methyl esters. Consulting, that's really how we have stayed alive. Consulting, design, build, with some sporadic production profits right now. We have a capacity in excess of 2.1 million gallons a year. Our engineering review came up with 3 million gallons a year. That number is actually low, and capacity really doesn't matter, because I'm not at 10% of this. Maybe for the year. Approved. On July 19th of this year, we were just approved for our RFS2 registration. Now, I've helped 2 other companies actually go through and get their RFS2 registrations, and in fact, I helped one company get RFS1 registered. But I guess like sort of the cobbler who fixes everyone's shoes and can't fix his own. I had issues. I had really serious issues. Was there a question? Okay. So required a third-party engineering review. And one of the things is you'll get really some high-cost folks who will come out and they'll give you these quotes of $10,000 or $12,000. You can hire your own engineer, and you can't hire your engineer directly. It's got to be third party. And you can probably get the cost in the, I'd say fairly $3,500 to $5,000 range. Is that about? You can get it down if you're creative. But that also means you're going to have to do a lot more work too. Prepared by creating a detailed process overview document, and we've been working on standard operating procedures in the co-op for over 2 years. And one of the issues with us finishing that process is we still have high turnover. And so you have to bring in a new person, get them sort of up to speed on what the basics are, and then you sort of introduce them to our SOP stuff. And so we've just been slowly writing those SOPs out. But we did have a very detailed process overview document, because honestly, my goal is to create an entity that functions without me being a critical path item to any decisions that are made. And that's really when you have a sustainable organization. And so I'm very focused on making sure that everything we have is documented, that there's some way to archive it that will make sense to the person if I get hit by a meteor, or simply just decide that life is too tough. Great for those for BQ 9000. And I think that also actually California's regulatory climate makes it great for BQ 9000 in general. We'll talk about later. There is a steep learning curve. And one of the other issues is it's hard to find these third-party engineers that have any experience with biodiesel if you're trying to get lower cost. And so when you're doing that, remember they're putting their license on the line. So you're going to answer more questions. If you're really concerned about your capacity, I know that there are some shops that have gotten engineering reviews that they're not happy with because they have been advertising that they are a 5 million gallon a year plant, and the engineer comes back with, no, you're really a 750,000 gallon a year plant. Okay. And so, and you're not going to win that argument. You're not doing that argument. So you have to be very, very careful with the guy you pick, but you also have to be very aware that there's some educating stuff in there and that these are not ideal paths. Your best interest is to be very realistic about what your real capacity is. Very realistic. And honestly, after this, our administrative costs will increase. They already have increased because all the paperwork that we do is incredible. No far in the front. I had an issue with EPA. I didn't like the result. We had registered under Office 1. We've been given our company ID. There was some sort of error that happened, and we were not issued our facility ID. And because of that, our production for 2009 did not have company RINs that we could cash in. We had about 120,000 gallons of RINs that we had to eat. And I went through layoffs. I really looked very carefully at closing because of that. And so, it was very clear that there was an issue because I'd ask very simple questions in the emails, like, what happened? And I'd get 4 pages back of regs. But I'd already gone through 90% of the process. And so during this, it became sort of a mission for me, and I filed a Federal Freedom of Information Act request with the EPA. And what I asked them for was every facility that had gone through the registration. I wanted all the information, and I justified that by saying that basically this whole process is very cumbersome for small producers, and that it's a threat to our national security because, quite frankly, I don't believe that most of the 20 million gallon a year plants are going to be operating. There are a few that I think are going to have long histories because they are closely related to ADM or Cargill. But otherwise, I think that the movement really is about small, localized production. That's what I really feel. And so I filed that. EPA came back with, this is going to take a long time because we have to send every application to legal first to review because they all have confidential business information in them. And I said to EPA, well, honestly, I understand what you're saying. I'm really just interested in the process overviews. I know that there is some confidential information related to who your customers are, what your fuel pathway is, what your feedstock pathway or food waste plan is. But quite frankly, there are only 2 or 3 ways to make biodiesel right now that are profitable from a commercial perspective. And so there's no proprietary information involved in any of those mechanisms, honestly. And I think that they agree with that. So we're still actually working on my FOIA. And one of the outputs of that FOIA is I want to see them put out a very nice document for small producer. I also asked them, because there's an exemption in the reg for small producers, guys who are making 125,000 gallons or less. You don't have to participate in the program. Okay? But I asked them, well, what is a small business, what is a small producer to you guys, really? How many gallons is it? Right? Because to the federal government, a small business is, less than 15,000 employees. Right? For me, that's a relatively large concern. So, so I asked them, what is really the number? Is it 1 million gallons? Is it 2 or 3? And they said, we don't have a number. We don't know. So what I'm actually trying to get them to do is in the next pass, they're already putting out new regulation proposals to modify the current regs. I actually want them to put in a specific, maybe not an exemption, but a streamlined process for small producers. Because honestly, the numbers that we're talking about, 2 million gallons right now sounds to you like it's a lot of material. Okay? That's nothing. It doesn't move a decimal point for these guys. So when they're dealing with small producers like that, it should be the case that they have a better process. That's just my personal opinion. EPA is the only agency to require a third-party review. So in the 22 months that we were getting permitted and authorized and getting all of our IRS approvals and things like that, the IRS was out at the facility 4 times. 4 times. They were out there 2 times before I even started producing. Right? Some of it was paperwork, some of it was look at the plant. Okay? We have the California Department of Food and Ag. Okay? They're out there every 2 months. They hit my plant like clockwork. I don't know why. Still, but they hit my plant like clockwork. Who else was out there? USDA. So all these other agencies, they actually send folks. EPA says we don't have the budget to send folks, so they push the cost and the onus on to you. They give you the initial capacity baseline, and then after a year, they have the option to reset that capacity baseline based on the actuals. So for me, there's a hole in this process because I've got to pay for something that honestly really isn't that meaningful. And we all know that really what counts is how much fuel I'm going to produce in a year. So maybe that really should be more of the process for a small producer. So that's about it. And I do acknowledge all the above are gross simplifications. So this is my feeling on the whole thing. There is back to malice that was radically explained by incompetence.
But that never makes you happier.
Yeah, it never does. So, Parliament of Fouls. Here we go. Path to expansion. This really is supposed to be about growing a co-op. And the first thing I want to say is make sure you understand why you want to grow. Because it's absolutely possible you're in a place that's a cool place to be. Even dealing with the daily frustrations of lost accounts and things like that, make sure that you know really why you're trying to grow. Okay? You can decide on organic versus inorganic growth. What do I mean by organic growth? That's just you getting in your vehicle, shaking hands with the restaurant owners, putting out Craigslist ads, doing your own hiring, that sort of stuff. Versus inorganic, which is basically going out and looking for an acquisition, looking for something to buy, a list from someone who wants to retire, that sort of stuff. Okay? There are pros and cons to both approaches. Right? In reality, you all could collect $1 million, thank you very much, and give it to me today, but I couldn't promise you that I'd have 300 more customers at the end of 30 days. That's a lot of money to be able to burn, right, to try to get 300 customers. But we know it's a relationship-based business, and we know that even if I got those 300 customers, they may not be with me in 2 or 3 weeks. Are there any examples of current successes using the approach you adopt? Meaning that if you look at organic growth versus inorganic growth, that's what we're here for. We're looking at, oh, I see this is working for this person, maybe I can try it out. But you need to make sure that you find an example and try not to be on, I don't know, the pioneer if you're really trying to be serious about growing your venture, right? I'm not extremely risk averse. I'm very risk tolerant. I'll take on a lot of risk, but quite frankly, the people who are in the co-op, they may not be in that situation. They have kids and families to feed, and so my job right now is really to make sure that they're as stable as possible. So consider who you've got around you. What are the capital requirements? Is it human or money? Usually both, but what are the real capital requirements? Again, that reality check, right? Maybe I wouldn't have made that acquisition had I known what I know now. Right? Now I've got to look for silver linings and opportunities, which is great. And due diligence. You must ensure objectivity. I knew I wanted to buy this thing when I started out. Okay, that was a mistake. Okay. So I mentioned some of our surprises earlier. 2 major chain companies, the clients filed bankruptcy in the last 12 months. It's a cash flow hit for us. Okay. Now the way these guys have done it, they're doing Chapter 11s. So the big company can come around, and if you let them build up some receivables with you, which you will tend to for larger companies because you know they pay slow anyway, they will just basically file a time frame. We're just not paying you for 6 months. And then you have to make a decision. Are you going to continue to service them going forward? Or and eat it or not? We've noticed in our region that the economy is impacting volunteerism and our ability to get human capital is sort of committed human capital. Okay? I don't mean that I couldn't hire people who would be happy working at McDonald's as well. What I mean is you're looking for, from a cultural perspective, people that are going to stay with you because you're imparting a lot of knowledge. Every time a person leaves, it's a part of the brain trust. And it's a difficult thing to replace that person, for us especially. One of the approaches that we have is that we're really caretakers for the culture. So I always use the analogy, we built this sandbox. Our job is to make sure that it's clean, it's free of kiddie poop when the kids come and play. As I always said, it's surprisingly difficult to convert customers who are used to doing something. and I've been mentioning all these things. We are experiencing a tremendous amount of theft, and maybe we just need to up our aggression level, but we're in the 30 to 40% range, and that's not an exaggeration.
Wow.
It's not. And we've done everything from shifting cycles to pickups on Mondays to, from Fridays and that kind of stuff. But the theft is really brazen, and the nature of the thieves are such that they don't really care if they're only getting 5 gallons right now.
Who do you think it is? Or is it
I have
everybody?
pictures I can show you.
I mean,
we have.
is it a competitor? Is it somebody doing homebrew? Is it tons of people?
We did. They're all just people who are not registered. We already have a system of registration in the state of California. So we have some people who are registered, but we also had an issue with. I'll just give their first initial. A company that starts with a B. Okay, relatively large company. And they are very aggressive about evangelizing the fact that they don't steal oil. But the compensation approach they have is that the drivers are rewarded by, in part, the volumes that they're bringing back from a quarterly bonus perspective. So there's no real way for the driver to control necessarily volumes. And there's certain things, don't pull any water and things like that. But quite frankly, I think it leads to supporting that environment. But we also have lots of just peddlers or individual folks who are going around, and this is their new way of making a livelihood because the economy's very bad.
Do you get much sabotage? We've had situations where people have clearly poked a hole in a barrel with a crowbar so that the oil would drain into a sewer drain nearby to get us in trouble.
100%.
And we've actually gotten pretty good at emergency response to address situations like that because we've seen a number of them.
No, absolutely. We do. I mean, that'll lose you an account, and that's really what folks will do. And we don't have a lot of problems, I think, with the majors doing that. But especially since I really actually feel, I don't know, that people are just trying to teach you not to lock the container. So that you will just keep it open for them. If they want to steal it, it's easy, instead of you getting damaged. I don't think they care about using the account. They're not trying to get the account. They're just going to steal the oil, right? Why do all the relationship work, right? One night stands are better.
A great example.
So, shakedowns and handouts. Okay, so about our FSC, I'm almost done with this because I know this is the driest portion, but I wanted to talk to some of the producers about this. It's a big deal for me. There is an ability to register as a foreign producer. Okay, so you can register your biofuels facility in Canada as under a foreign registry. Okay, and you can generate renewable identification numbers as well. Okay, I believe that this will actually impact the market for RINs. So that even though we're looking at North American production, we're very centered on North American production as North American producers. Sorry, United States, I apologize. Geography. Typical American. Anyway, but anyway, I think that actually will be a surprise to folks when they realize that there's going to be a lot of foreign trade and there's going to be the ability to generate these RIN credits. I think it's going to maybe have some kind of impact on the price of the
And
market.
might reduce the price of RINs.
I would think so, their availability. Now, there's again the demand, supply demand issue. So I just don't know, especially since it's moving to a mandatory market. But RFS2 RINs pricing stability is yet to be tested. It did a really big leap over the last 6 months. It's sort of steadily gone to a lower level now.
What's that now?
To something on the wet gallon, 220. What do you think?
I haven't.
I think it's
gotten
220 and
that
232
price
on the
quoted
wet
to me
gallon.
for
That's
weeks.
the combined mod. I think it's about that. There is a new HR 2238 Biodiesel Tax Incentive Reform and Extension Act, and there's an additional bill in the Senate. So in the U.S. we have a $1 excise tax credit. They're introducing a new separate bill. I've been predicting the death of the biodiesel tax credit because I believe that the ethanol tax credit was going to go away. And I do not think that MBB or other lobbying organizations would be strong enough to keep the biodiesel incentive in place if the ethanol incentive is out of place. But we're yet to see. Okay? Grease theft, we already talked about that. Looking for a grease bubble, I think it's unlikely unless the credit expires. Okay? Just from a time frame, I don't think, I think that we'll actually see the price increase with the price of corn. Future trend, I'm sorry.
So just a question, back one slide. So HR 2238 is a bill to extend the tax credit?
Yeah, and to reform it. So they want to give stability to the market. So the current proposition is, I think, for a 5-year, 3 to 5 year program.
5 year, but they're going to change it from a blender's credit to a producer's credit.
And that's actually the key here. And that's really the key here. The current tax credit is a farmer's credit. It's a farming subsidy. And it has been operating as a farming subsidy. And so our feedstock, even though it's used cooking oil, that's 99% of our feedstock, you got to think of it the same relationship. The guy who collects it is the farmer. Right? He's doing the harvest. And if he's aware what the floor price is, right, he's going to eat at the credit. It's one of the reasons that we didn't get gangbusters production. You didn't see all 160 or 172 plants that are out there suddenly come online when that credit was in place. Because honestly, the economics of the credit alone aren't really what's in
Just
play.
drove up the price of feedstock.
Absolutely. And feedstock is actually at an all-time historical high. And it hit that high in a 6-month period of time. It literally went from LA prices, 12 to 15 cents a pound, up to its current 44 cents a pound. Okay, and the Midwest market is higher. Midwest, I think, is 45 to 48. Understand that virgin soy oil was at 54 cents a pound, and this is still dirty oil that we're buying. Go.
The discussion around that was pretty interesting because they were all talking about it in terms of unintended consequences.
Yes.
Yet you just said that it was essentially functioning as a subsidy.
That's what it was. I mean, historically what happened in 1999 is MBB was backed by Iowa Soy Association. This was biodiesel. There was a fundamental mistake with biodiesel because what happened is the group got together and said, we want a piece of the fuel pie. We've got this stuff, we know it'll work as fuel. We want as big a piece of the pie as you'll give us. Okay? So they got a big piece of the pie. In fact, the pie was so big, we couldn't possibly eat the pie. We couldn't possibly provide enough forks and knives and people to eat the pie, fuel to fill that pie up. And so that mistake is really what's sort of haunting us. Because quite frankly, we really are in a way making an additive when it comes to the national markets. Not for B100 loyalists, but for the national market, biodiesel is really a fuel additive. And it should not be the case that it has to deal with the same pricing structure as diesel fuel. That's just from a commercial perspective. BQ 9000 or not, we're doing BQ 9000, but I actually long for the day of the death of BQ 9000. And the reason I say that is because BQ 9000 is just what we should be doing. I don't think that there's anything special about the set of requirements for tracking, for quality management. I think that we are in a business that requires us, from a responsibility perspective, to make sure that we can ensure high quality food. So I think that everything in BQ 9000 should be de rigueur, just what we do in this business. And so I'd hate to see this necessary. I hate to see this necessary to get a contract. That's also, to me, the sign of a mature industry. Right now, we've gone back to Henry Ford times. We're blending kerosene and making our own fuel at every gas station. Okay? And we're looking at ASTM from a quality perspective, so we do have a spec there. But we all know we don't always hit spec, especially first pass. At least I won't, I'm sorry. So the whole deal here is that I would like to see this go away, but you will see me jumping on board. The economy is still impacting volunteers, and I do feel that. People are getting a bit more worried about the time, even if they're unemployed and have more time, honestly. They're just really stressed out. I guess done something. So rethinking community scale, because I don't necessarily think that we're actually the best example of community scale, and yet I think we are, because we have a population density to sort of fill. So for me, I was just asking the question, what is the community scale to you, to your community, to the EPA, to the IRS, to those guys? Because all those folks have to sort of come together in the future for you to build a sustainable operation. How many jobs do you plan to create? If any. Maybe it just stays informal. It's appropriate. How much tax revenue is generated? And these questions actually help you if you're trying to place a plant, quite frankly. How is the community empowered? How much petroleum is going to be displaced? And how much is the community willing to pay? And that's just not from a dollars and cents perspective. It's also from permitting, helping with your permitting costs. How much will they pay for the fuel? It's okay. Food is going to be more expensive, and fuel is going to be more expensive too. This is not a secret. Big, big elephant tape right there. So we're going to have to get people used to understanding that there is going to be this natural inflation for pricing. And if we can educate them on that and sort of help them hedge or cushion, because that's one of the roles I think a cooperative really can place, is it can help hedge the cost of fuel when it spikes really high or goes too far down. So we might be able to service our community in a way that's a little bit different. Not worrying about the first question, which I always get asked, which is it cheaper? But how does it really service the community? Well, we act as a hedge for fuel pricing, right? So getting into that kind of model might be something that people would look at. And it may be a model that actually you can get money from your community. A little bit about the plant. Sorry about all the text. Okay, so we do a lot of stuff on our plants, and so I just want to show you a couple things. We've restored some centrifuges. The centrifuge actually was built in 1938. Okay?
What kind?
1938.
No, what kind? What brand?
It's a De Laval. So it was a military surplus turbine oil centrifuge. Okay? And you can see the signs of the upgrades that have happened over the course of the years. They installed a filter press in the 50s. This heating element was installed in the late 80s. We changed the electrical. We had to refab some parts, but it is an amazing centrifuge. It worked very well for us. It's one of two that we have in the facility currently. We have adopted cone bottom tanks. And we had to, because sometimes we're doing 500 gallons. In fact, we're always doing small batches, but we try to run them very quickly. We use high pressure, sometimes higher temperatures to get our product basically mixed well and started along the road very quickly. And so sometimes we'll do pull-offs and other kinds of things with the cone bottom tank. We're quite good at accidentally making emulsions. And we've installed, I mentioned to you that we had 2 tanks before. I've got some more pictures I'll show you there. Now we've installed an additional a little bit more than 20,000 gallons of storage. And we've done some not in big tanks. We've used a series of 4,000 and just under 2,000 gallon tanks because, again, a lot of the oil that we get isn't ours. And also, when we're tolling, a lot of the fuel isn't going to the same place, and it helps us with batch control. So installing the additional tankage for final product or intermediate product was really important, but we didn't need one big tank. We learned from the last time. So that's what we did.
Are they all poly tanks?
No, these are all metal UL listed tanks. So for that's another thing. Permitting is sort of a bear. We got away with the poly tanks from a fire department perspective, but quite frankly, we couldn't do that when we were putting in. This is 12 tanks. This is a 12 tank farm. They're really 2 tanks here per pump.
You got 10 minutes.
I'm sure everybody's seen this stuff. We've got a different approach for smaller loads that we receive. And so this is where we'll do a screen for the crab legs and the chicken pieces and that kind of stuff that we'll find in the oil from before we actually cook it.
What's the coolest thing you ever found in there?
I wouldn't call it cool. The grossest thing was probably a condom. The
Grease.
yeah, it's nasty.
Self-lubricated.
Well, there's just all sorts of stuff. But no, rats. That's really it. There's not cool stuff. Just
Yeah,
gross.
frogs, rats, money,
Yeah.
utensils.
Money? Again, Kumar, what is this about? Anyway, over here, you'll see that we've got some approaches where we will do decantation because we also reuse these tanks. So we actually have to wash them out, rinse them out a lot, stuff like that. And so we'll do decants for glycerin if we're doing that, and we'll just drop it down standard stuff. This is Cyclops. This is our rated pressure vessel. Okay. And so this is actually where we make all of our batches. We have done lots of esterification in Cyclops, we do lots of other stuff. Our maximum temperatures that we have a special protocol for doing that is just under 600 degrees Fahrenheit in Cyclops at 102 psi. So again, it was a glycerin processing plant, and that's the kind of temperatures that you would normally need to really do some good glycerin. We're also focused on making sure that we can do things very, very quickly. That doesn't mean that every batch is perfect. It does not mean that our yields are always high for every batch. But what we're trying to do, honestly, to get consistent production is get the low-hanging fruit out. Because low-hanging fruit, honestly, is generally also the easiest fruit to clean. Stuff that breaks first, has great separation, tends to be the easiest stuff to clean. And we'll go back and we'll touch the other stuff that isn't so great later on. Normally 2 touches in a business is very good. I understand that I have to acknowledge. Trucks, this is actually before we had finished the installation of that manifold that I showed you earlier where we had the filtration inside. And so basically the trucks would actually have to back in much farther. We have a tank that you didn't see on the other side that will take a truckload of oil as well. This is, well, I should name the name, but a famous hot dog company, sort of, starts with a W. And that's their oil. And it's solid. I mean, it's solid. So I like to show that picture. We got this is Andy Pag or Pogs. He's got this truck, or sorry, this converted van he's taking around the world, and so he stopped to fuel up at our place. These are the tanks I was talking about that extended our tank farm. And there are other trucks, actually. There's 3 truckloads of tanks that we brought in. This picture didn't come up very well, but it just shows you some bodies. So what I wanted to actually talk a little bit about was we don't get textbook yields. So yesterday, I don't know what your glycerin yield was from a percentage perspective yesterday. When you
Measured it yet, but it looks pretty good.
Okay, see, we don't get yields like that. I mean, we average 15. It depends on the oil quality, of course, but oftentimes I don't think we've ever gotten a perfect break out of used cooking oil. It's 15 to 25 or 30% for first pass. Now we can acidulate the glycerin and come back and do some stuff with that oil later on. But when you're looking at the commercial side and you're looking at paying for oil or your cost of collection, it's really important to sort of understand that it's not good to pay necessarily for the top price for the oil because, quite frankly, your yields are highly variable and sort of dependent on your process and everything's gone wrong with the process at that time. I thought that week there too. We have these sight glasses and you can not see it, but we'll just see the glycerin breaking.
5 minutes.
So they have plenty of time. The future foci, cash flow, especially making it happen in timing. Okay? Cash flow is king. We actually have great receivables. And if you look at a balance sheet, we're not profitable. We're good to go. And the problem is that cash isn't coming in any fashion that makes it usable. And slow money is more expensive money.
Yeah.
So that's an issue for us. We're going to have to fix that. We're retrenching in our production. And one of the things that, and now that we have the ability to generate some RINs, we have some additional opportunities to do some other work. So we're looking at that very seriously. More sales and marketing. We've hired some new sales folks. We've also gone about and taken it upon ourselves to also change the payment policies. So certain folks prefer service payment payments as opposed to after. Okay? Still in distributions, we still have capital constraints we need to fix. And we're looking at wastewater around brown grease capacity as well. We are working with our local municipal water district. This is trap grease. It's about halfway heated. Okay? When it comes in, it's pretty solid for us. This has already been flocculated and it's full of sulfur. And so one of the technologies we've been working on is an approach to remove the sulfur at an appropriate price. And so I think we've got that. We actually applied for a grant, a USDA NIST grant related to that as well. And hopefully we're going to get it.
How much water?
Oh, well, this stuff actually has been liberated. It's less than 3% moisture.
Oh, okay.
This is already been processed. This is actually coming from the treatment processing plant. Okay. So we're trying to partner with them and actually have that as a feedstock. We've already converted that to methyl esters, but we needed some additional equipment, some of which I've just bought, that will allow us to deal with this stuff on mass. Because, quite frankly, it's much harder to clean, and the way our system is designed, we'll need to cook it before we start processing. Any questions?
On the trap grease, since you're doing other processing, is your strategy for sulfur at this point just to blend it down?
No, because 15 parts per million on the sulfur here is very hard to hit with a blend approach. And the amount of trap grease, even though, again, we're a small producer, so 5,000 gallons of this stuff is still a hassle for us to deal with. Okay. So, from that perspective, we definitely have to get the sulfur out. It's just not viable to blend it down. Any good question?
If you had to do it again from start to finish, what quick things would you do?
What everybody else is doing. Focus on oil accounts and oil collection, and having a feedstock stream. I don't know yet, it's too early to tell.
On one of your last slides there, you had retail with some question marks. And I would say that it enables cash flow possibilities doing it that way because you can create prepaid discounts. For years, we offered prepaid discounts to our customers at different levels, like a $2,500 level, a $5,000 level, and a $10,000 level. And by limiting the amount of fuel they could get each month at that discounted price, they pay full price on the rest, you can kind of turn it into a loan. And you have to give kind of generous terms. I mean, we gave really big discounts, but we had some amazing help with cash flow and some horrible times.
Gotcha. I will take that advice, actually. Any other questions?